Welcome, welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the Connecticut Affordable Housing Conference. We are so excited to kick off today's first set of breakout room conversations. And if you are wondering where you have found yourself today, hopefully you've landed in the right session. We are 4.3 local affordable housing task forces. It was 11 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And the session is sponsored by Grow America and Paul B. Bailey Architects. So thank you so much for your support of the session. Carlene Charmelis and I from the partnership will be here to support the session. So if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat to reach us. I'm very biased and very excited for this session. So I'm really grateful that I get to be here to sit in the background and listen to a great swath of panelists today. Without any further ado, I really want to kick it over to our speakers for the day. So I'll turn it over to you, Jen, to get us started.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here with you all. I'm Jen Paradis. I'm the executive director of the Bethel Center in Milford. We are an organization that supports individuals, families, veterans experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity and hunger within 13 municipalities in the from Milford to Madison and Lower Naugatuck Valley area. We are also a backbone organization to the All In Alliances, which we'll be hearing about today. Neighbors getting together, working towards exactly the conversations that we're going to have today, learning and growing our knowledge and understanding on housing and the housing needs of our community, and how do we build towards a future that works for all. I am also biased and very excited to be here with some outstanding panelists who have done this local work for, in some cases, months, in many cases, years. And so today's workshop is really an opportunity to highlight some of this work happening across the state. We know and we understand that that we are who we're waiting for, right? As neighbors, as subject matter expertise in a variety of areas, that we are who we are waiting for at the local level to engage one another, to engage our municipalities, and to do the work of bringing affordable housing to our community. And there's so many different ways in which we can enter into this conversation and to quote unquote get started. And so it's our hope that today's workshop, today's presentation, is learning from some of the examples that are provided today. My personal goal, and I think the goal of the fellow panelists, I dare I say, I know the goals of the fellow of our panelists here today, is to take lessons learned and interest sparked in today's conversation beyond today, right? To say, okay, if you are somebody who's waiting to take step one, do you know what that is at the point in time leaving here? Our hope is that you do, but if not, you know who to connect with in order to kind of talk through that more. We also, as I mentioned, have groups that have evolved over many years, and so are facing new challenges as a group that's been doing work for some time. And so if you are somebody who is in a group that says, I'm not quite sure what our next move is, it's our hope that you can find a handhold here as well. And so I think where we'll start is kind of going around the room with our panelists here. Today we are joined by Sarah Locke of All In for Oxford, Donna Jolly of Hebron Code, although Hebron Code, there's also Andover, Columbia, Marlborough, and East Hampton. We have Rob Dackers from Glastonbury Friends of Affordable Housing, or I feel like a name correction is needed there. Glastonbury Friends of Housing. Okay, yes. I'm going to ask you to speak directly to that, but I'm glad I didn't trip myself up. And then, of course, MJ Kessner of Guilford, who will talk about her work there. So, Sarah, would you mind giving a brief introducing yourself and sharing a few words about All In for Oxford and the All In Alliances?
Sure. My name's Sarah Locke. I'm working with All In for Oxford and some of the other valley towns here in the Naugatuck Valley. The All In Alliances are unique grassroots, ground level organizations. So we refer to ourselves as an alliance. What we share is a passion for equity. Our three goals are that we everybody deserves to have a home, everybody deserves to have good food to eat, and everybody deserves a voice in their community. How those get acted out in each of our alliances is unique to the communities in which they work, because it is all run by and bubbled up from people who live in those communities and care about their neighbors there.
So much. I'll turn it over to Donna.
Hi, thank you. I'm Donna Jolly. I am co-founder of the Coalition on Diversity and Equity. We call ourselves CODE for short. We started in Hebron, which was my hometown for 40 years in 2020, and grew incredibly rapidly to the point where we now serve 5 towns in Eastern Connecticut. Um, our mission is it's a little lofty, to create more diverse, equitable, and vibrant communities. And we wanted to purposely have it be broad, and ambitious and aspirational, to create a big tent. But right off the bat, one of our first priorities, and still one of our top priorities, was housing and the creation of more housing options for our communities.
Beautiful. I love your entry point into housing on the local level. So I'm excited to chat more about that. I'll turn it over to Mary Jo.
Hi, I'm Mary Jo Kestner, and you can call me MJ. I've been working on housing since the Guilford Foundation did a needs assessment with the Yale School of Management in 2012. And last year, the town got our committee organized into a commission. They founded a Guilford Affordable Housing Commission and also started a housing trust fund. So we are about 12 months into that and excited about how to move forward.
Awesome. I hope that I'm not overstepping here, but I also would love to share that you're an architect, correct? And so you get an opportunity to take this on from
all the time. It's my passion. And, as a little suburban town, we have trouble doing affordably, and I would love to do more of it.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for letting me extend your reach a little bit there. And finally, Rob, would you mind introducing yourself and sharing more about your group?
Happy to, and happy to be with my fellow panelists and everyone here today. My name's Rob Dakers. I'm a member, probably one of the founding members of the Glastonbury Friends of Housing. We've been around since September of 24. And we started off with a small group of us, and with the guidance of the great David Fink, he helped us guide us along. So we've been growing and becoming more active. And one of the issues, I think, what sort of got us created, I think there was a small group of us, and the town council often got tired of the same old faces coming out and talking about housing. So we thought we'd try to grow a larger group. And we want, I think with housing, there's often, when a housing proposal, multifamily housing proposal comes up, there's often concerns, nearby neighbors. And as David Fink has said, that's understandable. Our house is the largest investment we have, and that most of us have. So those, raising concerns is understandable. But obviously, the affordable housing crunch is really, affecting and harming people in many ways. And I think we wanted to gather together to kind of highlight that, and also to show that there's also a constituency in town for housing. Sometimes there's a feeling there's really not constituency in town for affordable housing. And the other thing we wanted to do was address concerns, traffic, crime, attractiveness of the facilities, impact on local property values. And our research has found that, for example, multifamily housing doesn't really generate that much traffic. I live near a large complex myself. I see it every day. And so I think we wanted to bring that into the discussion as the town reviewed proposals that came before them. And so we've been at it for about over a year. We're fledgling, but I think we're growing and hoping with our influence as we work with our fellow residents.
Yeah, so much of this relies on us becoming subject matter experts for ourselves on a lot of these pieces, really understanding, kind of separating fact from fiction, separating phenomena, like the phenomena effect of one thing or another from, what actually happens when you help the folks that are working in a community actually live there, right? Like that when you're able to kind of rebalance that. So thanks so much for framing that out. I picked up a theme that ran across all of you all, which was really around equity, that this is about building equitable communities. And so that's a lovely place to start. I'm going to ask us to go a little bit deeper into the origin of our various groups. I get a chance to talk with many folks across the state who, get excited, but truly where to start is such an intimidating thing. And at risk of oversimplifying, I literally say anywhere, like start anywhere, but we know that that is not exactly true either. So Donna, do you mind if I start with you on just really talking more, going into a little bit deeper detail around code, what was the catalyst and how it quickly caught fire, because you certainly shared that.
Oh, thanks for starting with me because I was so resonating with what you said about how to start, right? So in Hebron back in 2020, during the pandemic, the town, a small town, actually it was our Democratic Town Committee, had a rally after the murder of George Floyd. And people came out with their masks and their signs, and we stood far apart and we didn't talk to anyone, and we stood there, right, to witness what had happened and to speak out. Afterwards, there were a few emails saying, well, that was great. People showed up. But there were a few of us that said, so what now? Like, how do we continue this conversation? There are people who are obviously in our community who are obviously aware and concerned. And I imagine wanted to do something about it. So there were actually 4 of us on Zoom for those first few meetings. And we decided, my background's in communications, so I said I can bring people together. I can get some experts to talk about housing. Let's and racial justice. Let's learn. So we did, and as we had these community conversations, more people. I mean, who knew people were going to show up? I had no idea if anyone would show up. Right? We would just be talking amongst ourselves, but they did. And we obviously hit a nerve, and people were concerned, and they wanted to do something. So at one point, there were one of our small little group, there were only 2 of us, and we thought, well, maybe this is it. We had a few community conversations. Let's pack it up and say we did good. But we kept going. And it has, like you said, it has taken off. And we realized there are so many people in the community who really care about these issues, who maybe didn't feel like they had the tools or the knowledge. And as you said, we steeped ourselves in housing and zoning. And I mean, I had no idea I would know anything about zoning in my retirement. That was not on the game plan, right? But
And then you think it was interesting.
I did, right. I went to every single, desegregate CT zoning camps and partnership for strong communities webinars, every single thing I could learn, and we all did. So that's a long way to answer. But we exactly what you said. We learned, we found people who are interested, and we brought them together. And that's really the core of what code does, is we bring people together to learn, to dialogue in a nonpartisan, unbiased educational way, which is so important right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Rob, I'll turn it to you next, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. I'm also been involved with the Greater Hartford. Our church has been our first church in Glastonbury, in the Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance, and we had one of the things we had was a forum on affordable housing, and we had panelists, and David Fink was amongst those, and so we. After that, we also, in addition to our group GIA, there's a group in town called Talk, taking action in loving kindness, I think is their acronym, and they were very involved in housing issues. So we had a core of folks that had been involved. So with David's guidance, about because he's helped to organize and worked with other groups across the state, we we started meeting, and we reached out to people we knew, and we had at our first meeting we had at First Church for the community. We had like 20 people sitting around talking about their concerns, their issues, their interests, and their experiences. And then we started to have other meetings. We had folks in, and I think we had folks who had done it in other communities, including MJ. She was, and I think she attended on a Zoom meeting with us, and we had a pretty. So I think MJ could say we had a pretty large group in the room interested, and so we had people from Fairfield, I think Guilford and Orange, and so that, and then we met with the developers, from I think other communities, not necessarily working in Glastonbury, but and I think they demonstrated what mixed income, with set aside affordable units, what they can look like and what they do look like. And I think that was an eye opener for people at the meeting, because we have preconceived notions about what does affordable public housing look like, and there's a lot of preconceived notions. And I think people say, it really can be nice and attractive and still meet a need. And so from there, we created a mission statement, a vision statement. We started to organize ourselves. We have a steering committee, a study committee, and a education outreach committee. And really, it is part of what we've been doing a lot of is educating ourselves about zoning and housing affordability and those type of things, making good use of PSC's housing profiles information, which is wonderful. And actually Danielle came and spoke with us. So we've been learning and doing outreach. And I think a lot of this is about showing up, which we are doing at town meetings, and speaking and attending, and and letters to the editor, those type of things. And we want to do community engagement. We want to have some community forums. So I think we have about 60 people on our mailing list, and I think most of whom have attended at least once. And we usually get about 30 folks at our meetings, and a higher number that are regular attenders. They may not make every meeting, but so I think we're off to a good start, and we do have some excitement, which we're excited about.
Beautiful, beautiful. Shameless plug in the chat for the housing profiles. I respect it, Danielle. Sarah, I'll go to you next.
Well, thank you. In our town, it started with, and I wasn't there for the very beginnings, but with a group of people who were already sharing an interest and a desire for a more equitable community. And that was the social justice group of St. Thomas the Apostle Church. I became involved with them when they were being helped and nurtured by our backbone organizations, which are TEAM and NVP and the Bethel Center, to gain the skills they need to do things like hold forums and start community conversations. And so I first met them when they were holding a community conversation or a forum about the ARPA money. Because it came to our attention that our town, which is very small, was going to receive millions of dollars. And without pressure, or without some effort on the community's part, the decisions on how to use that money would be made without community input. And so we worked very hard together, and I joined them in that work to bring it to the community's attention so that the community members would have a voice. And that's continued to be our focus. With the help and support of the backbone groups in our town, is to convene all the voices together, to get the people who aren't normally heard in my town heard in a way that their voices are included in the decision making. We have a long way to go, but it's a beginning, and that's how we got started here in town, and we continue. There are ups and downs. Some months are great, some months are more challenging, but we have a committed core group of people doing the work, and it's been exciting to see what we can accomplish.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're going to be able to weave this in, but I just want to acknowledge. I mean, I think one of the most difficult months was the flooding, the floods that occurred last August, I believe, almost a little over a year ago, and just how All In for Oxford, as well as other groups in the area, we're also able to step in as community partners, kind of in whole, even though your issues are around building for the future a more equitable community. It was also showing up for your community right now. So just want to acknowledge that. MJ.
So it's kind of funny because I was thinking about like how I started with this, which seems like a long time ago in 2012, but actually in learning about it, there was a group that came before, as there always is, and they were the groups that started the housing authorities and the housing partnerships, and those folks were, mentors to some of us who are starting this, but it really started with the community sort of realizing that housing is an unmet need in our town. And it's not unique to us, but it's hard. So nobody picks it up. There's a lot of social service networks that are surrounded around food, but this is really hard. And it took us a little while to, find some footing, but we did, find a lot of people, curious around the issue. And one of the first stories I heard, which is also before my time, is that there's a big, farm stand in our town, and they have these seasonal workers, and a church group got together to provide housing for those folks. And they would buy some homes and fix them up, and the mortgage rates were low and the interest rates were good, and they would rent them to those folks for a little while. And then they found out they could pay the mortgage, and they would take it over and have those houses. And that group of people got worn out, and then a nonprofit bought them. But that was initially how it started in our town, which I think is so interesting to think of now. But as we started, house prices are high, mortgage rates are high. We don't have infrastructure. It's a big challenge here. But as I'm going to shout out again to Partnership for Strong Communities, because they really did hold our hand through getting started. It started with them actually applying for a grant from a local nonprofit foundation, the Guilford Foundation, to do a housing video. And through this video, we talked to all sorts of local folks who people knew who told the housing story. And we heard from the first selectman. We heard from a resident in town who then became a senator. And we heard from, the local principal who is beloved, like about how, the family gets divorced. The kid wants to stay in school. Somebody has to keep the house. It's a thing that even as a middle-aged person, I'm not looking for housing now, but it's very easy to meet people in town who are, and they're struggling. And we sort of have one flavor of housing in Guilford. We build single family homes, and they're in delightful neighborhoods, but they're really expensive. And so we have over time, we've updated our zoning, we're updating our plan of conservation and development. We have a group in town now with the Housing Commission that works, we meet them every month. We also try to do community outreach stuff. We have a committee for that where we do talk to developers, have public outreach events. But the things I would say about how we started were that, we did get some financial support to do a project, and then people kind of rally around that project, and you learn who your partners are. And a lot of times it is other nonprofits who can help in sort of unforeseen ways. But I would say that it's been super successful for us to partner with them. As a town committee, we got help from the Guilford Foundation. We got help from the library. They would share their mailing list. We would have little events there. So I think in our story, which is, a little more local, there are a lot of local partners. And I would say that reaching out to partner with events and learning is a great way to meet people who can help. And so again, this kind of stuff is terrific, and thank you for doing it.
Yeah, I put a pin in the housing story video because it is incredibly powerful for participants of this workshop. Our hope is to send some of the materials that we highlight so folks can take a look at them at their own time and also adapt them, right? Like
Sure.
The video in Guilford was so good it won an election apparently, and somebody became senator from it. So no, but we'll if I can, MJ, add that to the list of stuff that we'll forward on
Sure.
to make sure
Sure.
participants are here. So thank you all. So taking kind of a hard pivot to where you began to where you're going, I'm hoping we can kind of take the next question in a very similar fashion and go around our panelists and really talk a little bit about, we just kind of said this is how we started. If we could talk a little bit about what the goals are of the group, which many of you have kind of framed out, but mostly focusing on what comes next for your groups. What is either the current project or thinking that you're focused on right now, or kind of design plans for the future. And I'll add, because I'm so good at adding like caveats to questions, I'll add, what is it a surprise to you, right? Like, oh no, are you exactly where you thought you'd be, working exactly on what you thought you'd be working on, or is the next step a surprise to you? So to frame that out, what are next step goals for you all? And is that coming at any surprise to you and your fellow group members? MJ, I'll toss it back to you because I feel like I'm coming to you last on these questions.
That's okay. Well, so for our group, I mean, we felt so great to become a commission from a little committee. We had started, the committee was the town put up a piece of land, and we studied different parcels. This one was near a daycare. It's near the railroad center. It's near a capped landfill. It had all sorts of funding buckets that a developer could get involved in. And so we had a project to build some family housing there, because our affordable housing in town that the housing authority does is for elderly people and disabled persons only. And we really heard the family need from our outreach kind of efforts. So as part of that, the town had to have a vote, and that's the slide. I don't know if we want to show a hopeful thing now, but this is back in 2020.
Now that sounds good.
So as a committee that had gotten a couple grants to study this, we had a vote of the town if we were going to turn this property over to a nonprofit developer to develop, and it ended up to be a good turnout of people. About 250 people showed up. And this is us raising our pink tickets to vote in favor of this. And so, yeah, thanks for putting the statistics on here. So 202 people voted for the project to be sent to a nonprofit developer, and 39 voted against it. And so this was in 2020, and we were so excited and energized, and there was a lot of great community feeling in that room. And but now it's 5 years later, and just this last week the project was in front of the Inland Wetlands Commission. So we're really moving slowly, and it's so frustrating for the folks involved. But this was a like a good moment for the town. And I think at this point, the town realized that if we actually do want to do this, we need to keep the momentum on. And that's a big lesson learned for us, that somebody needs to run with the ball, and you will be running uphill. So you should gather some people to go with you, so you can hand it off. You have to pass sometimes. So where we're going now, we have the commission, we have a trust fund, we have inclusionary zoning. So if a developer develops a parcel of more than 5 units, they have to make a contribution or provide one of the units as affordable. That has not gotten any takers. So we're going to be looking into why that is, and if our zoning should be further amended. We also applied for a grant to study other parcels in town, because our town leadership is very supportive, and one of the things they can do is provide land that they are not using for other municipal needs for this use, and they're actively doing that on a 9-acre parcel, which also is steep and wet. And so we're hoping that goes out to RFP, hopefully by the end of the year, for somebody who could do some multifamily development there. But we'll also have another RFP out to try to find other town parcels or other parcels that are privately owned that might be good, because we have limited water we have kind of a narrow place where maybe we could really pull that off. So that's one. And then the zoning is just to review that. It's very new, but it's not singing along. And so we'd like to know if we can make that better. And the other project is our housing video is a little older now, but also we want to make affordable housing less scary by doing another video about what is it about being home that reaches everyone, that's not political, that it's, somebody said the dog's nails on the floor when you open the door, or closing the door behind you, or the wreath on it. What is the emotional thing or whatever. So we're going to try to do another video that's significantly different, but has like kind of a wider reach just to get to the issue. Because one of the things that's been so helpful to us is that we've had a lot of positive voices come out and support things we're doing, and we want to build on that.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for all of that. There's so many things out of there that I want to come back to. So hopefully we'll have time. If not,
Sure.
We'll do part two. Rob, do you mind sharing a little bit about kind of what your next steps are? And is it surprising to you that you're there? Oh, you are muted, my friend.
I always do that. I'm going to probably echo somewhat Mary Jo's or MJ said. We've been fortunate in town here. Actually town leaders have recognized the problem, and they're going to work on them, and we've been able to be supportive on those. There's the Nye Road project our public housing authority is going to do, the first non-restricted housing for low-income folks that's been built in town for 60 years. It's still in the works, and we hope the financing comes together, but the town council has been very strongly in support of that, and we've supported them along the way. Inclusionary zoning, zoning regulations to make mixed-use developments easier in our downtown area, creating a housing trust fund, and there's been some 830G proposals. We have a lot of proposals in town, and generally speaking, local leaders, ours included, don't really like 830G, but they've gone by the law and approved two of them. Not that they would have necessarily approved them if not for that, but they did approve it. It's just sometimes easy to just say no, whether saying no makes sense or not. But then they did turn one down that's now under appeal. And the town is also undertaking a review of the zoning regulations, longer term. It's taking over the next year, and that may, I think, dovetail with the recent HB 8002 that just passed, which the towns have to develop. One of the options is to develop housing growth plans, and I think those may dovetail together on that. So, and we want to be involved in that. We're stakeholders, and we want to be involved in that. So one of the things we've spent a lot of time lately is learning, whether it be the zoning code, demographics, 830G, researching about the myths and misconceptions often about that. And our study committee, we have 8 members on it. They were each assigned something to research, and now we've brought it back together, and we're putting together information that will make us more educated emissaries for housing. And so that's what we're working on now. So we're ready to prepare. One thing is that housing is a very complicated and contentious issue often. And so we're trying to take the complicated part out of it for our members by demystifying it a little bit, the zoning regulations. And the contentious part is we've taken the attitude with David's the approach with David's thought is that we're for something. We're not against people. Mm-hmm. And we respect their concerns, and we try to address them respectfully and not judgmentally, and with facts, and try to introduce that into the conversation. So I think that takes some of the scariness out of kind of stepping into a situation in which we're a little more knowledgeable, and also we try to stick to the facts, and while being respectful of other people's, obviously the concerns folks have about, their homes and their property values and that type of thing. So yeah, we spent the summer educating ourselves and also gearing, how are we going to do education and outreach, and we're
Yeah.
kind of, the creating the content and also how do we get that out to the public. So
Yeah.
that's our next steps.
I appreciate that. I like how you framed it out as like confusing and contentious. Like housing in a local community is kind of both of those things. And the confusing piece can really be addressed through the education, us kind of coming to our own understandings. And then being able to share that with our neighbors through communications, through thoughtful communications. And the contentious piece of it is the neighbors coming together to really ensure that the projects and the proposals and the workflow that are coming out of these groups speak to the whole communities at large. Sarah, I had immediately in my mind that I was coming to you next when Rob said, oh, well, it's been, we've had a great time working with our leaders and they've really welcomed us. And, not to say it's not hard in Glastonbury where Rob is. We know how difficult this conversation can happen anyway, but I also, because you're a comrade with me and All In, know some of the work that you've been through. So would you mind sharing a little bit about where your goals, what the next steps look like for All In for Oxford? If you have any surprises there, but if you could also just as an add-on, talk a little bit about how, I know there have been moments where you have not had alignment with the town of Oxford, and I'm hoping that you could speak to that as well.
Thank you. Yes, Oxford, just as we started with people who had shared interest, we had to start where people were already gathered, which was with one of our local churches. We are working hard to constantly assess where our community is and to assess where our community members are on their feelings about affordable housing, and to assess where our leadership is, our community leadership at the municipal level. And right now, we engaged in some of that listening, and we have to adjust because I would say our current goal right now is to gain an acknowledgement that things are not as they could be. And I live in a town where there's a large number of not only the leadership, but also the community who feel that there is no housing problem, not in Connecticut and not in Oxford, and everything is fine. So we're working on finding a way to address that in a way that's meaningful to them, that they can start to relate to it. And one of the things has been the idea that our young adults go out and we pay an awful lot for them to receive an education, and then they come back and they can't live in the town where they grew up and they can't stay near their family because our particular zoning situation is by and large 2 acres, single family home. And if you're going to make a 2 acre single family home work as a builder, you got to make it pretty big so that you can get a decent return on your investment. So a lot of big, expensive homes on nice pieces of property. And so we're working from both inside and outside to bring some changes to that. So for instance, I recently got a seat on the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I'll be working from that point of view to change some perspectives and bring some information to light that might not otherwise be there. And community-wise, we've decided that where our community is right now is they really want to be a rural community. We're post-agriculture in a valley full of post-industrial. And so our latest plan is to unpack with our community members, with our neighbors, with our friends. What do you mean when you say rural? Is it a social thing? Is it a visual thing? Is it the way you like the way the horses smell when you drive past? What is it that means country or rural to you? And how can we take that and carry it into the future so that we don't have to abandon our rural roots in order to create a more equitable and open community?
Thank you so much for that. And Donna, coming to you.
Great. So we had three main goals. I'll try to talk real fast. I can get to all three. The first is obviously improving or increasing public awareness of the need for affordable housing and the benefits for the whole community, right, of having more housing options. And we've had really successful community conversations. Again, we had no idea if people would show up. We do have a slide if you, I don't know if you have access to it. And they did show up and they asked great questions. And we had to like stop. We had about 10 extra questions that we couldn't get to. So we had to promise that we would answer the questions through our newsletters. But people were very curious and they wanted to understand and to learn. And then we did a video. Well, actually, we had another community conversation just on the voices of young people because Sarah, as you said, you know, the issue of young people wanting to live in the community where their parents and maybe grandparents lived and where they grew up and went to school, but they can't afford it. So we had a great, this is probably one of my favorite community conversations. So we had a great discussion. They talked about the need for walkability, affordability, fun things to do, a vibrant community. You know, this was, we asked them, what is their vision for a great community? Where do they want to live? We didn't say, you know, what is your housing need? But obviously they talked about all the things that we want to see in our community. And then we edited it down to a shorter video that then we could disseminate to folks. And that has been really great because we want to show, again, it's the hope and the vision, right, of what our community can be when we have more housing choices. We disseminated pictures of beautiful, affordable housing, mixed income housing developments all over the state. I think we have some in Branford, Guilford, you know, all over to show people this is what it will look like. And then our second goal was to reduce the barriers, right? To get into the zoning codes and understand what are the natural barriers about, you know, needing to have big houses on big lots. And so I guess our biggest success was in Columbia, one of the towns that code serves. And it had to do with our code members, two of them showing up to the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings, learning, asking questions, getting a seat in the zoning regulation review committee. Again, if you ask those two folks if they ever envisioned them doing that. But as they got more involved, they were literally asked to sit at the table with the other folks that were reviewing the regulations. And they made great suggestions. They would do research for them. And all the changes that this group came up with were implemented. And they were significant. They were, you know, changes in ADUs and duplexes as of right and multifamily, you know, really enabling multifamily housing. And I love this, that the town planner said that our code leader was an agent of change. And I just love that because that's what we hope, right? That we will be able to make meaningful change. And then the third goal is to actually support the development of affordable housing. And we're very lucky in Hebron to have Father Ron from the St. Peter's Episcopal Church and a nonprofit called Commons Community Development Corporation, which I'm also lucky to be a board member of. And Code and Commons have worked so closely together. Code has, you know, attended workshops to learn more about the plan for the housing, what it means, the complicated way to make it actually real, and then to educate others, right? Code's goal is to make sure everybody in the community, not everyone, but people who are interested, understand what this will mean for our community. They've come out for community conversations, and then they've shown up. Like every step of the way, we've gotten Code members and others to show up for the planning and zoning application, which was unanimously and enthusiastically approved, for the town meetings where the tax abatement was considered, which was approved. So Code members will show up at every step of the way. And as we all know, not many people show up to these meetings. So if 5 or 6 people show up and support something, our leaders will listen. And I have to say that in Hebron, the town leaders have been very supportive.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. I would love to take the next question as kind of a quick popcorn around the room. We want to make sure that we have time for some questions from participants and for kind of our wrap up together. So if you could offer one piece of advice or one thing to somebody who is interested in starting their own affordable housing group in their community, what would that be? And I'm not going to limit us, but let's try to move kind of quickly through that. And Sarah, I'll start with you. One piece of advice. Drink water. No.
Stay hydrated. Kind of along those lines, to understand that it's a long haul and it's really complicated. And so find like-minded people and lift each other up, and to meet people where they are, even if it's not where you want to go, that's where they are. So you need to meet people where they are and take the journey with them together. It's a long haul. It's some longer than others, and not give up.
Wonderful. Rob, thoughts from you?
I think trying to see what groups are out there, what people and individuals are out in the town, any like-minded groups. I think we've also heard a number of churches involved and religious organizations involved. But no, so yeah, look for folks who are already active in this or who are sort of aligned with the goals of making our towns more welcoming and just and stronger, more vital, which is really what a lot of this is about.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because actually, if I could just take one step back, Donna, the pictures that you shared, and of course, the I really wanted to show there was just such a representation at this gathering. This is the commissioner for the Department of Housing. These are, of course, representatives from Partnership for Strong Communities. We have faith leaders here, and of course, we have so much of the community represented. And so, just coming back to what you just said, Rob, is really kind of looking across the community. You know, I often think about this stuff kind of three-dimensionally, right? That all of the networks in which the relational infrastructure in which our communities are formed, you know, are not necessarily through that process of public to planning and zoning, right? We have to kind of deconstruct that and say, how do we get it to, you know, how do we have conversations and relationships along the way? That way, coming back to that moment where there's projects and planning in front of planning and zoning, there is less confusion, or hopefully no confusion, and more unity in that process. So thanks for calling back, Donna. I thought you picked the best pictures for that presentation, because it really just showed who's in the room, right? Representative of like all of the different touch points of our community, and also what we don't know, we have subject matter access to, right? Nothing like bringing in the partnership and the Department of Housing to have these conversations and help you all along in your work. MJ, advice.
One of the most fun things I've heard is that a lot of times where I am now, I'm looking to ask people for money. Like, can you help me with this? Can you fund this thing? Like, I want to do this thing. But actually, like the best thing is to ask for their advice. Like, if you're going to go talk to someone who you really respect and admire, who has some experience, just ask them for advice. And what would you do? How do you feel? If you're with a group you don't know that well, ask for their advice. What is their experience with housing? Like, people will share things, so I think asking for advice is a great way to open a door, and who knows where you're going, but
who knows where you're going. Yeah, being open to that, right? That connects so much to what Sarah's comments were, and allowing what they provide for you as their perspective and their needs and their ideas, allowing that to help inform
where they are.
Work. Yeah, and where
as
they
Sarah
are.
said, meet them where they are and see where you can go together.
Yeah, absolutely. And Donna, words of advice.
So the danger of going last is literally everything I was going to say. but yes, 100%. I mean, my first thought was look for the natural supporters, the people in your community who care about this issue. And it's so far ranging. So it's from young people to seniors to employers, the business community. I mean, housing obviously affects everyone, and people care about their community. So this issue is relevant to everyone. and absolutely listen and learn. Like, we don't go into these meetings saying, here's what we want to do. It's, what do you care about? What is your need? What is your pain point? What's been happening in the community that you like or don't like? What would you like to see more of? How can we help? And then at the end of the day, it's always to find common ground and look to collaborate, right? That's how we get things done. We're not, code is not going to change the community, right? We work with others to make meaningful change. And then the other thing, I have to say this because my career is in communications, is communicate, communicate, communicate. Even if you think you've been talking about this for 5 years and everyone should know, they don't.
They
They're
don't.
busy, they have lives, they got kids to get to soccer, and keep repeating and help people tell the story, like help others when they're at a soccer game or they're at a PTO meeting and the topic of housing comes up, make sure they understand and can communicate as well.
Yeah, I mean, and communication was one of those themes that I certainly saw rise to the top of all of your comments. And, I think so much of this can be kind of intimidating on the front end of things, right? You're kind of entering to this space. You certainly know what you want to see in your community. Like that's what's motivating you to kind of wake up and do that. And so you're like, well, but my role is actually to listen to everybody else and to see, how do we incorporate that and the communications piece, it kind of feels like, this kind of multi-dimensional space to manage. What I offer there is we are the experts of our own communities, right? We are the experts of our street, our home, our neighborhood. And so although there's strategies, Donna is a communications professional, so certainly there are best practices. We also understand how our community talks to already, right? And how our community shares information already. And what are some of those who are those trusted messengers in the community to really touch base with first and often. You're so right about naming that even if you feel like you've been saying the same thing for 5 years, you have to keep saying it, that there's people are in different touch points in their lives. They didn't hear it the same way 2 years ago, if they did hear it, right, than they do now. And so that we are the consistent reflection of what a community wants to see for itself as we stand today in these groups, I think is really, an important touch point. So thank you all for that. I think we do have a few questions, probably not too many, but if there are participants who have questions, please feel free to enter them into the question and answer tool, I think. So the one question that we have there now is, hopefully there will be someone to explain for those who have formed private nonprofits in the areas, what were the steps taken to get there? I'll jump in really quickly just to speak for All In. And I know, Sarah, you had mentioned that All In is supported by 3 different nonprofits as backbone entities. And so I'm really just saying this to offer that there are some alternatives to forming your own nonprofit, as well as also aligning yourself directly with the municipality, like the government functions. Like there are some options. In All In, the nonprofit organizations support these groups as backbones. And so, one, it's nice to be able to kind of get the trusted messaging of the local nonprofits who are tried and true in the communities, and this work is aligned with the missions of the organizations, but also just capacity and resources, the professionalism of communications and things like that might be a barrier or a heavy lift kind of on the front end for groups. Our job as those backbone nonprofits is to kind of pave the way to make those logistics easier, more digestible, so people can kind of get to the fun stuff of learning, planning, and zoning, and working on other projects. So, but I should know this, but I don't know if any of the other groups are established nonprofits, and if you could offer some. Yeah, please do, Donna.
Oh, I was just saying, yes, code is, we decided to become again, when we started out, this was not our goal to become a nonprofit organization. But as we started doing more programming and receiving grants, we felt bad always asking St. Peter's Church to be our fiscal sponsor, even though they said they would. And also, we were encouraged to become a nonprofit by some of the town leaders. They felt that it would add to our credibility and our ability to, say, this is the organization we care about and it's going to last, that we are here to stay. I'm not going to lie, it is it's work, right? To create the nonprofit is work. You have to really think through who you are, what are your goals, what do you want to be, how do you set up a board that is reflective of your values and the community. We were very fortunate to talk to our colleagues, our new friends in Glastonbury. Glastonbury Talk was very generous in sharing bylaws and financial advice. And this community is very generous, right? We learn from each other. And there are tools online that you can go through that, to show you the many steps. So for us, it was the right thing to do. There are many other groups out there that never have to go that way, and that's totally fine. It's not one way is better than another.
Thank you for that. Another question that we had is related to 8002. And Rob, I know you touched a little bit about how you hope the housing growth plan process is in alignment with kind of the work that you're doing on the ground. I don't know if you have anything else to offer around how you see 8002 helping or just kind of working in concert with what you have in Glastonbury.
Yeah, I think part of it, yeah, we'd like to, because there's obviously have to be a process for towns creating their plans, and we would like to be, considered as stakeholders and, being part of that. I think part of 8002 is sort of reflecting some of the things that we're going to start advocating, which is, as certain multifamily housing. Right now, multifamily housing in Glastonbury there's none of it can be done by right, where single family homes are. And so the bill does talk in commercial areas, some number of housing units could be done multifamily by right, maybe 2 to 9 in a commercial area. Also, I guess there's one of the things that probably has motivated a lot of towns on housing is, and I think true in Glastonbury, is 830G. And I think Glastonbury would love to get to a point where there's a moratorium that you can get to if you get enough points. And so I think the law does a lot of things, and that's a whole separate session. But it could be you can get extra points by allowing middle housing in certain residential areas. So there may be opportunities that sort of dovetail through 8002. But yeah, we'll have to see as it unfolds. But it will have, I think, an impact on all of our efforts to promote affordable housing.
I'd add to that there are groups like right now, our plan of conservation development is ongoing. So our planning and zoning commission is doing that. And whenever something comes up about affordable housing, they're like, oh, but we have a new commission that can help with that. And so it is, you sort of get these orphan, projects, but nobody's also quite sure we can handle it because we're so young. And so it's a weird, dynamic, but I think, I think a couple of speakers mentioned that being on P&Z and being in the room and starting to be part of the discussions, I think that it's super important to be there, however you can get yourself in that room.
I have the vision of a toddler, we're all going to start digesting 8002. We're just going to start bumping into corners of countertops that are always the same height as a head. I don't know how that happens, but yeah, any other thoughts around 8002 and the hopes for how, Donna, Sarah, how you can leverage that locally?
I would just say that the process that Hebron went through to create the affordable housing plan, and with CODE's recommendation to actually come up with a goal, numerical goal of, building 75 new units of affordable housing over 5 years. That was hard, but has been so helpful. So I think with this bill encouraging towns to do that, incredibly helpful. And then obviously, Hebron and many rural communities struggle with the lack of infrastructure, right? Water and sewer. So support for that is incredible, will be incredibly valuable.
Awesome. Sarah, 15 seconds, 30 seconds.
I would just double down on the need for infrastructure, and the more regionalized approach, I think, will also be helpful to towns like mine.
Yes, yes, regional approaches. Danielle put another nugget in the chat around a summary that partnership put together on 8002. So you could read the 93 pages or something, or you could read the summary, or both. So just as we close, thank you all so very much. The panelists, thank you so much for your work. You are some of the busiest people that I know in the state, kind of wearing multiple hats. And so we're just really grateful for your movement on a local level. I took so many things away from this conversation. MJ, you said, you had a couple of banner stuff. You're not alone. This is not unique. It's just hard, right? You're not alone. So look back to who has done this work in your local community. Look to those subject matter experts from across the state. Certainly the Partnership for Strong Communities is one of them. But with that said, you locally are the one running with that ball up the hill, right? And so find your people, gather, find each other, build community through shared interests. You can use an event, and the passing of 8002 is an event to bring people together. So there's a moment like this. Educate yourselves, right? That we no one is coming into this as a subject matter expert, and even at that, it does not have to be in everything. And lastly, Rob, the big banner: show up, show up, show up, show up. Be in spaces. Just keep coming back, and do that in partnership with your neighbors. So with that said, we're at 12 o'clock. Thank you all so very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Big round of
Thanks,
applause for our
everybody.
Thank you.
speakers. Thank you for joining us. As folks are dropping off, just a reminder that we've got a 30-minute break, so we'll come back for more conference learning at 12:30. So we hope to see you there. Go get some food. Stay hydrated. Thank you for being here. Have a great one all.